guys, how's it going? Welcome to this week's weekly recap video. I'm going to answer questions from last week's videos, and we have a bunch of fun stuff scheduled for this week. Just this morning, in fact, we got in a big load of beautiful blooming plants, so we'll be doing containers and in-ground plantings and just a bunch of fun stuff that I'm excited to share with you. But let's just jump into last week's video. So the first one was planting a container full of cool colors, and in that video I just had this beautiful dark teal colored pot that I thought would be really pretty with different shades of pink and utilizing some blue-leaved plants, and I think it turned out really pretty. I've really been enjoying it. Jody said, I noticed that you did not add biotone to this container. Is it because you will transplant them in your garden in the fall and you're not concerned about root growth? Should I wait to use the biotone when transplanting my container perennials in the fall? And you know, honestly, I don't have a whole lot of experience putting biotone in containers, especially when I'm planting annual flowers. It's something we want to test out because I've always had nothing but a great experience with biotone. I've never had a bad experience, so I think it's something that would probably be just fine. I think it's just muscle memory that I use the other control or continuous release plant food, and that one does work really well. So I think in that case, you could probably use either or, but definitely biotone when you plant them out in the garden later in the season. Stephanie said, how do you know which zone you are in? So I would just Google it, growing zone, your zip code, and that should tell you. You could also ask somebody at your local growing zone, and they may be able to give you some more honed advice too, because sometimes you'll live in one town that'll tell you it's a specific zone, but there are pockets in every single area where it's just a little bit different. Camellia said, when a plant's tag says zone 5 only, and you're gardening in a zone 6, is that plant going to be suitable for my zone? Yes. So what that zone is referring to, when you see on a plant tag, like for example, zone 5 through 9, this plant grows in zone 5 through 9, that means the plant can withstand cold temperatures down to a zone 5, which is negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you're in a zone 6, great. That plant will come back for you really nicely. Julie said, in a future video, could you step us through dismantling and replanting your container arrangements into the landscape? That would be super helpful. I'm surprised I haven't done that yet. Have I not done that yet, Erin? I've done a succulent before. You know, I'm about ready though to dismantle the heuchera planters I did up front in those beautiful savanna urns. They're looking really great, and I'm ready to plant them out in the landscape now that we have our new flowers. So I think maybe we'll do that in a video. So be watching for that. Nina said, unrelated question, but I haven't seen No around. Did he leave? And I have seen that question often, or a lot recently. No is the long-haired black and white kitty that's totally wild, but he comes around every once in a while. I just saw him last night, so he's still around. I still put food out for him, so all is well. 2 said, how about placing some kind of mirror in front of you when you film, and then you'll be able to see how it looks when you're filming, which is a very good idea. I always complain about, you know, having to put things together from behind and not really knowing what it looks like until the end. A mirror is a very, very good idea. Then I could see what I was doing. Erin, add it to the list, shopping list. Katie asks, I'm curious why you didn't run drip tubing in the container. So I actually didn't forget in this case. I didn't run it because we are actually giving this container to one of our family members. So as soon as we are able to get out and go deliver containers full of beautiful things, we are going to do that, and I'm so excited. I only recently started outdoor gardening for the past year, and your channel has been a great source of information and inspiration, which makes me super happy to hear. Because perennials only flower for a short period of time, do you select ones more for the leaves when you plant in the containers? How do you maintain and keep the planter's interest for the entire growing season? Do you swap plants through the summer, leave as is, or plant the perennials in the ground? What are your plans for this planter? So over time, you start to realize which perennials will give back the most in terms of color or in terms of foliage interest. So in this container, like the heuchera will look like that all season long. The artemisia will look like that. Ivy will look like that. The osteospermum is the only annual, and that will provide my big amount of color in terms of blooms. And then the one perennial in this container that will lull with blooms is the veronica. But I've had such tremendous experience with that plant. I mean, it's just been an amazing perennial. So it has its beautiful bloom spikes, and it had new ones starting, and I will deadhead the old ones off as they start to fizzle. And I feel like if you do that and kind of fuss over the plant a little bit more, it produces more blooms. But even out in our landscape, I have them bloom. It seems like they're in color all the time. So we'll see how it goes with this container. This one is going to a family member's house, but I'll be able to check in on it. Nicholas says, my local garden center sells many varieties of Proven Winner Supertunia. They sell them in a small black square pot, and it's not in the normal round white pot. There are tags in all the pots saying they're Proven Winners. Do you know why they would not be in the round pots? Are they the same? So they are the same. Certain growers just haven't adopted the white pot method of growing. Either, you know, their machines are set up differently or whatever, but it should be the same plant. Katie said, is that heuchera new this year? No, you should be able to find that heuchera this year. Debbie said, is this the Veronica that is resistant to powdery mildew? Yes. Regina said, when you talk about perennials being different from annuals, are you referring to the sleep, creep, leap growing style, habit, for lack of a better word? If not, would you mind to expand on that comment a little bit? So I did, that's in reference to my comment on how perennials don't react in containers like annuals do, because they do it. The sleep, creep, leap is a common thing. Like the first year the plants sleep, the next year they creep, and the third year is when they leap. And that's for perennial shrubs, trees. It's kind of an old-timey saying. Anyway, and that is fairly true. So in containers, they're just not going to put on an enormous amount of growth, not like annuals do. You put one 4-inch Supertunia bubblegum, Vista bubblegum in a container, and it's going to grow this big in one season. You put a perennial in the container like that heuchera, and it's going to bloom and look beautiful. It's going to push some new leaves, but it's not going to expand out massively. So you can get away with putting a lot more together in close quarters. Debbie said, Laura, why don't you wear gloves? I've been trying real hard to wear gloves more often these days. I started wearing gloves more when we had Benjamin because, you know, of course, you've got this newborn baby and I didn't want sandpaper hands. And I don't know, I would prefer to do most gardening things without gloves, and it's a stretch for me to even wear gloves. I like to be able to feel what I'm working on, but it does tear up your hands. And last question from that video, how does the soil not plug the drain holes? I put pot shards. Oh, the drip just turned on. That kind of scared me. I'm a little gun shy. I just broke a water pipe last week, so every time I hear water turn on, I feel like it's going to spray right at me. Anyway, I put pot shards or stones over the holes to keep them open. And I know a lot of people do that. I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that if it makes you feel like it's going to aid in drainage. I don't have any issue with soil plugging the hole because the water is running through the soil anyway, and it's going to run all the way to the bottom. The only thing I can think would be a problem is if you've got your pot like smack up against concrete or something and it's like super heavy and there's not a really good way for water to exit, in which case I usually lift my pots up on feet. So there's a little bit of space underneath the pot and the surface it's on, so water has a chance to escape. Yeah, I've just not had a problem with that before. And next video was edging a flower bed with bricks and planting a maple tree. So in that video, I took after the flower bed behind the chicken coop because it's driving me crazy. Everywhere that we have those little gray pavers on the ground, which I'm looking at in front of me, we're sitting up here in Versailles, a ton of them up here. They were used as edging because, I don't know, maybe in the past people were able to get their hands on those easier. So they used them. And I picked those up. I put a temporary brick edging down and then we had to end up digging up an evergreen and planting a new maple tree. Anyway, I'm really happy with how that turned out because even though the project turned into more of a beast than I thought it was going to be, I feel like that area is starting to come together. So Miguel said, what variety of maple tree is that? And I don't know if I ever said it in the video. Like I gave no information about the tree. It is called an October Glory maple. It's a zone 4B. It grows 40 feet tall by 35 feet wide. The shape is broadly oval to round. Foliage, oh my word, I said foliage. You guys are wearing me down. Foliage is medium green and glossy, and fall color is deep red to reddish purple. So maybe we can find a picture and pop it up on the screen because it's a beautiful, beautiful tree. And it's one that I considered putting down our new lane. I think I'm gonna maybe do something different there now, but I'm excited to see how this one does. I think it's gonna be perfect in that area because I think it will shade everything perfect, the chicken coop perfectly. Okay, sorry I didn't include any of that information in the video. That was like a huge oversight. Next question. After centering the fountain, would you consider adding another arched trellis on the other side of the window? It would aesthetically enhance and balance the wall. So, and I don't think I will. I think I'm going to be doing some plantings right there that will kind of bring up some interest and some, also some weight to that area. I know it looks very bare now, but I do not like having too much stuff in one area, be it arbors or concrete or whatever. And I know in our garden it's like we have a lot of stuff going on, but I try to make sure it's really spread out, and we are like, there are some pieces that I'm going to be moving around and moving out because I just don't like to have a bunch of stuff going on in one area. And I think having the one arbor and the fountain is a plenty because we've got that pallet walkway, and then the chicken coop itself is really pretty, and I feel like that's enough. But don't quote me on that. I mean, who knows? I might end up putting another trellis there. Jessica said, love the placement of the tree better. Better use of the tree for the future. Question, will all those roots from previous elm tree eventually decompose? Will they keep growing? So I expect both. I expect it to want to push growth from some of its viable roots for a little while, and we will be probably using something on it, some kind of spray. We'll cut them off and then probably paint the stumps with something, and then we will let it decompose. If we have the tree service back out to do anything, which we don't have them scheduled for anything this spring, which is kind of nuts. We've kind of made it through our property, removing the things we needed to remove, but if they happen to be in the area or we get them here, I might have him grind it a little bit deeper if he can do that, but it will eventually decompose. It'll just take a long time, and I can't even put a year on that, a year stamp, because I have no idea, but a long time. Augusta says, how do you deal with weeds since you don't use landscaping fabric for your flowers? So we hand pull weeds that are in the flower beds, and then we use the Bonides burnout on the gravel driveway for the most part. And we have our garden zoned. I explained this, I think, a week or two ago. So I had a aerial shot, or Aaron got a Google Earth shot and printed it out for me, and then I highlighted specific areas of the garden in 5 different zones. So one zone for every day of the work week, and for every day of the work week, that zone that's assigned to that day is gone through. For weeds, they're all hand pulled, deadheading, insect patrol, anything like that, so that every week, every area of our garden is looked at least once with a fine-tooth comb. And I feel like if you don't let the weeds get ahead of you, then they are very easy to maintain, because right now, I mean, each zone takes you like an hour to go through in our garden, which is a pretty good sized garden, but you just get your bucket and your pruners and you just whip through it quick, and nothing has had a chance to really set in hard. So as long as you keep that up from the very beginning of the growing season, it's really not that hard to maintain unless you get relaxed and stop looking at things for a week or two, and then things can quickly get out of control. Sherry says, I just love the tulip blend that you have around your chicken coop. What is it called? It's the Gamay blend from Color Blends. Carrie said, will you also be replacing the paver wall outside your kitchen door? Yes, eventually. Do you ever rewatch your older videos and realize how much progress you have made? I think it would actually be better if I watched those more often, because sometimes I just get kind of like, oh dang, I really wish that we would have tackled this project or would have got this thing done. But then if I step back and realize how much we actually have done in the past 4 years, I mean, it's pretty incredible. I'm just thankful for the speed in which we've been able to move, because I feel like, I don't know, a lot of big projects have been done. Stephanie says, Laura, I just planted an ashleaf spirea in my garden, but I've been reading that they can be aggressive and send out suckers that can get out of control. Do you deal with this issue? So they do send out suckers. I don't find them to be incredibly aggressive. I have one in this garden, and I had one in my last garden. I think they're beautiful, and they're worth having to pull suckers every once in a while. I feel like it's a once a month thing. You go out and pop some suckers out of the ground, and maybe once a month, maybe not even that often. Nothing like some of those other things you can put in the ground that just like take over. I think they're worth planting. Antonio said, that looked exhausting. Do you ever start a project and wish you hadn't? Yes, and I think that's totally normal. I think we get ourselves into the middle of a project, especially if something's gone wrong or it seems extra hard and you're thinking, oh, I really wish I wouldn't have done it. But don't you agree that when you're done, it's such a relief, and you're so proud of yourself for like pushing through that thing and getting it done. The only thing in my life I can think of that really, like, I really wish I hadn't started and or agreed to, and this is kind of off from your question, but is speaking in public. And I do that every once in a while, like usually 4 or 5 times a year we travel to flower shows and I speak in public, which is not in my wheelhouse. It's not something I am good at or love to do. I love to meet you guys, and like in the future I would love just to do meet and greets and no speaking engagements at all. I know that that's, like I said, it's off from your question, but it's the only thing that I can really think of that I just like find myself wishing I had never agreed to do. Danica said, do you ever worry about termites with mulch? I don't. We don't have a termite issue in our area. Kimberly said, it looks great. What's the yellow flowering plant near the pallet walkway entrance? So that's called a basket of gold, or Aurania saxatilis. I don't know. Put the name on the screen. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's beautiful right now. Taylor said, where did you get your pineapple fountain? So that came from Unique Stone, and the poor thing still needs to be cleaned out and needs to be filled and turned on. It's a beautiful fountain. Cheryl asked, where's the chickens? They're in there. They actually hang out in the coop part a lot. I have a fan going in there right now. It was pretty warm that day. And then we are planning on putting up, I don't know if I'm going to get like some willow branch screening or some shade cloth or something like that. And then maybe a misting system, but we'll figure out something once it gets really warm to keep them nice and cool. But they were mostly in the coop during that video. I could hear them. Arby said, not related to this video, but I've been wondering for a long time if you had the hypothetical chance of moving your whole garden or property to a different growing zone in the US, what zone would that be? And will you consider moving to a tropical zone? Probably like a zone 7. Don't you think, Erin? Like something with like consistently warmer winters, maybe more mild summers.
Boise.
Erin would move to Boise, which is just an hour down the road from us. I love our area, honestly. Like I complain about the heat a lot and it's really dry and yada yada, but like honestly it's better than being humid. And there's a lot of good things about our area. In the fact that we get four distinct seasons, and I love that. I love knowing pretty much what to expect from year to year. I like being able to celebrate the seasons for what they are. I do wish that our area was a little bit more green, but that means that we would have a lot more rain, and I don't know. Like maybe that would make gardening easier, but it would also bring some struggles too. I don't know. I think there's pros and cons to every area, and I'm pretty happy where we're at. Anna said, how long did it take you to complete this project? With the unexpected changes, it must have been a long day. I think I started that project about mid-morning and we finished mid-afternoon. So I think it took about between 3 and 4 hours. Would have taken me a lot longer had I not had Erin's help to dig stuff out because that area was tough. Okay, next video is planting a Glow Girl spirea in the moon garden. So I just planted one shrub in that video. It felt a little bit weird, like I wasn't doing very much, but it honestly has added so much in that spot. I'm loving it. Creative Lady said that spirea is going to look gorgeous. It's so cute in its small size. Are they evergreen or will the spireas drop their leaves in the winter? That one isn't a deciduous, so it drops its leaves. Tracy said, any plant suggestion for a shade moon garden? Yes, so there are some gorgeous caladiums out, like White Wonder. There's probably a whole bunch of different caladiums that have white in their leaves. Astilbes, you can do impatiens and begonias that are white. What else was I thinking? Patriot hostas are beautiful. So they're green and they have really heavy white, bright white variegation. I don't know, there's probably a whole bunch of things. So if you guys have suggestions, please add it in the comment section below. Kay said, it seems impossible to keep track of all your plans and experience. If you keep a garden diary or log, will you share it with us? So I don't keep any sort of diary or log. I mean, we have videos, so we have that sort of thing. I could always go back and check on progress or whatever, but I've got multiple spiral notebooks inside, and I like scratch out plans or write down lists occasionally, but I hardly ever reference them or use them. I just kind of like do stuff. I don't know. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and I try to keep it in here, which is getting harder and harder to do. Pamela said, it looks beautiful there. Got a spirea a week ago, and today I found tiny green insects in its new growth branches. I was researching and apparently they are aphids. Any advice on getting rid of them? Yes. So we did a video all about aphids. We will link it down below. There are several things that you can do to get rid of them. Fortunately, aphids are one of the easier ones to manage. Pam said, love the color of those leaves. Is it just me or is the urn base tipping forward? Maybe it's just the camera view. So that area is really interesting because there's multiple optical illusions because the fence isn't level, it kind of goes down. The land isn't level, but the brick pathway is level. Every single urn is level and they're all level to each other. So if you stand way back, you can see that they're all level to each other, but you can also see all the other lines going on. And there's also like telephone poles or what do they call them? Are they telephone poles? Yeah. Is that wrong? It's improper. Power poles. Anyway, there's one over there that's incredibly warped. So there's just all kinds of things going on that I cannot wait for those arbs to grow taller, because I think once you can't see some of those other lines, it will all make sense and it'll look a little bit less tippy. Melissa said, has it bothered you or do you think it will eventually bother you that there are red point maples in your moon garden? No. I don't like to set, in fact, I almost didn't want to call it a moon garden because I didn't want to like lock myself in, because I don't like to lock myself in ever. And I don't want to have to follow any specific rules. The red point maples though, I mean, their new growth has a little bit of a red tinge, like I'm looking at one right now, it's all green now. No, it doesn't bother me. I'm a rebel like that. Red point maples in my moon garden. Connie said, what kind of lavender do you have by your vegetable garden? That is Sweet Romance lavender. It's a wonderful one if you have a smaller space and you don't want to get this enormous lavender plant. I think 12 to 18 inches tall and wide, and beautiful dark purple blooms. And last question from that one, Jesse said, will you put another one to the other side of the delphiniums that are next to it? I feel like it needs to be balanced. So I didn't want to repeat that. And you know, who knows, maybe in the future I will. But at some point I need to stop doing everything balanced over there because I don't want it to look like just, you know, repeat of each other. I mean, we've got a lot of balance already going on with the urns. The hardscape is like solid and balanced, and then I do want certain plant elements to repeat as well, like the delphiniums, the arbs, of course, but then I want to start varying my planting so that it's interesting. I feel like it could get very boring very quick if I only use the same things over and over and over again over there, if that makes sense. Okay, next video was a tour of my parents' garden center. So Maria said, what type of maple was behind you that is burgundy? My mom and I have fallen in love at minute 11:48. Those are Crimson King and Crimson Century maples. Dixie Girl said, wish I had one nearby with that much variety. So how loaded was your truck when you left? So I didn't actually take anything home that night, but I went back and I got the Shiloh Splash Birch and I got the 2 big ferns that were in the shade house. Those were 3 things that I just, I had to have. Haven't planted them yet though. You'll probably see them in a video soon. Severin said, every time you take us to the garden center, everything looks different. Amazing space. Does the garden center grow any plants from seed? No. They at this time don't have enough space to really do a whole lot of their own growing. Erin said, what about the Winchester Cathedral Rose Standard in the Moon Garden? Yes, I think that would be so pretty. I totally forgot about those. I need to go back and see what varieties they have left. Katie said, do they sell Christmas trees in the winter? I bet they would make it beautiful and festive. Yes, they do. They do both live and cut Christmas trees, and the whole shop changes over to Christmas. So there's, I don't know, like 8 or 9 artificial trees they put up because they have to stay in there for so long, with different themes, different types of ornaments, different kinds of decor, and they do a big holiday open house that lasts for 2 days, and they serve treats and coffee and all kinds of stuff. It's a really fun place in the wintertime. Sam said, do you have any hopes or aspirations to take over the nursery someday? You know, who knows what will happen. I think that's kind of the direction I was headed at one time. I worked there full-time for a lot of years. And then we started making YouTube videos. My life kind of took a different direction, and so did Erin's. We had no idea it would take this direction, but it did, and we were really enjoying it. You know, I can't see my parents retiring. I don't know. I feel like they are just going to keep on going until they can't. So who knows what the future holds. My brother works down there right now. Yeah, I love it, and there's so many memories there. It's a very nostalgic place for me. It's a lot of work and a lot of risk, I think, depending on the year. But yeah, who knows? We'll see what happens when it happens, I guess. Brenda said, does ornamental mean you cannot eat the fruit, or it doesn't actually fruit just for looks, or does it mean it's like a mini? I've always been confused about that word. So I think that ornamental, you can find it in varying degrees, but ornamental means ornamental. It's the whatever you're growing is grown for aesthetic value. It's grown for its pretty flowers, or its growth habit, or its ability to withstand whatever, you know, your area throws at it. But sometimes ornamental things will produce some kind of fruit. Like, for example, a thundercloud plum. We planted one in our corner garden last year. There's a huge one down at the nursery. Some years it doesn't produce any fruit, some years it does, and they're like, you know, quarter sized or so, and they are edible. They're not as good as normal plums. So it's not something, and ornamental things aren't something you can bank on for food production or for a food crop. They're just grown because they're pretty. Cole said at 1520 there was what looked like a wisteria growing on the left of the screen. What's your take on them, and do you have any advice on growing them? So I don't have a tremendous amount of advice. I haven't grown a ton of them. I do have one here. Cannot remember the name of it. It's planted on an arbor between our tool shed and our chicken run. How come I can't remember the name? But there is one growing on the wall of the shade house down there at Andrews, and it's been down there forever. It's got a huge trunk, super established. It got killed back, like in one of our really bad cold snaps that we had years ago. We thought we lost it, which was a huge loss. I mean, this wisteria grew all the way up the wall and then way across the ceiling of that shade house, and those big purple blooms would just like fall through the slats in the ceiling, and it was so gorgeous. But then it like took forever, but it sprung back to life, and now it's a lot smaller, but it's starting to do its thing again. What I do know is that there are some very invasive types of wisteria. Wisteria sinensis and floribunda, I think. Chinese and Japanese wisteria. And then there is a variety native to North America. I think it's wisteria, let me look up. Wisteria frutescens. That's not invasive. So I know that that's a huge consideration when you're planting things, that you don't want something that's going to like take over everywhere that you put it. And it might be something you do want, because I know there are some areas where you just want things just to take over and kind of do their thing in an area, but sometimes you want it to be more contained. So just keep that in mind. Other than that, we just kind of plant them and let them go, and I don't treat them special. Other than like I'll trim some wild branches that get a little bit too tall over the arbor. I'll kind of trim those back, and we do the same thing down at the garden center and fertilize it once a year in the spring with plant tone or flower tone, and that's it. Amber said, can you tell me what plant it was that you said attracts hummingbirds? Vermillionaire Kufia. Sherry said, do you have a website or do you ship? So Andrews, it's andrewseed.com. They do have a website. They've got some things listed on there for sale. Mostly seeds is what they do now, and there's a few other items. And a lot of times they get a lot of messages whenever we go down there and show certain things. They'll get messages from you guys like wondering if they'll ship certain items out, and they'll do it. If there's something that interests you, just call them or send them an email, and they try to work with you or even connect you with a source where you can get it locally. So they try to be as helpful as they can that way. But they just started this website where I think like this last winter was the first time, right? Was it this winter they started offering seeds for sale? It's been in the very recent past that they started doing this, and so they're just kind of trying to like get used to this and kind of get a system in place and all that sort of thing. James said, great selection. However, when I look at places like Gardener's Supply, many of their items like their herb planter box are out of stock until August. Is this typical that when you want to buy something because it's growing season, it is here, you can't get it? Not really typical. It's very atypical. This year has been a very atypical year with everything going on in the current crisis. There's a huge push to grow things, and a lot of people are getting into gardening for the first time, and so a lot of people have been stocking up on things. So it's been really quite hard for people to, well, nobody was able to plan for what happened, and so like trying to get a system in place where they can handle the amount of orders they're getting has been a little bit difficult, but they're working hard and working hard to try to get things done. So that's not typical. I think it's just this year. And last video from this week was Holy Hookerella Blooms. Katie said, the clematis in the background, would you please share what variety is? It is. That's a Brother Stefan, and I planted like 3 of them last year. They're all doing really, really good. Super happy. And Trudy said, what do you use to keep weeds from coming through the mulch? We're in Florida and struggle with that even with black paper underneath. And so I explained earlier that we hand pull and we just have everything on a very tight system so that nothing ever gets out of control. But I can see a weed, like I can see a big one in our boxwood hedge, right in front of me. Things sneak through, but as long as you just stay on it and don't let it get out of control, you should be able to kind of keep on top of it. Christina said, will deer or other animals eat them? So we don't have deer that eat our stuff here, or rabbits really. I've seen rabbits around just down our lane. I saw a rabbit the other day running around, but they haven't found our garden yet. Like, there's no wood for me to knock on. But anyway, we don't deal with that. We deal with gophers. And I have to say that a very disappointing thing happened this week. So our big, in regards to gophers, at the end of our brick walkway on the west side where it kind of curves and comes back out to the driveway, I planted a big multi-trunk crabapple tree, a spring snow, and I pruned it. We did a pruning video this winter and I showed it and we pruned that up. It was just looking a little weird. This is like day before yesterday. I went out there and I thought, it's got leaves. It bloomed and it's got leaves, but the leaves just look weird. Are they like, does it have aphids that were all kind of curled up? I went over there and I can rock the whole entire tree back and forth, and I did a little bit of investigating. There, a gopher ran right through the main root system of that tree. It's holding on by like threads, by little thread roots. So I like tossed biotone in that hole, packed it full of good compost, and I watered it in. I'll probably lose that tree because of the dang gophers. And that's really the only thing that bothers us here, but they will bother you to the point where they will take out an entire tree or an entire plant. I mean, they ate the 3 roses that were over there. I saw a new gopher mound near one of those roses this year, and it's just one of those things. Yeah, we all have one of those things in our garden we have to deal with. Suzanne said, I have an off-topic question. How did your clematis do on the 3 beautiful trellises you got from Gardener's Supply? I want to plant a clematis and I've never grown one before and would like to plant against a fence, but wondering if I should also put a trellis up against it. Just so long as that fence has something for the clematis to grow on, and you can run strings if you want. You can do like little eye hooks and run strings so that there's something for the clematis to climb on, and then you eventually won't be able to see those strings. But you also also could put something more decorative against the fence, like a trellis. That always works great. Those were pink mink clematis, and they're all doing really good. Cut them all back. They've all got fresh new growth. I don't know, I'm gonna watch them because I don't know that that area gets enough sun for them to do really, really well. I don't know, they might do great. There's buds all over on them, so they might just surprise me, but they are looking very healthy right now. Lynn said, can someone tell me the name of the dark purple bush next to the fence? That is a black lace elderberry. Azalea Acres said, so beautiful, I need to find some. Do you or could you have a video about mailbox planting, dressing up the area between our fence and the mailbox? Weather Road is something I've been looking forward to doing. That has been on our list for like the last 3 years, right? We even have a proper planter for like to put around a 4x4 post. It's not something that really anybody does in our area, so it just kind of gets pushed out because it's just so out of my realm of, I don't ever think about it. Like, we don't even have a mailbox by our house. It's way at the end of the road, and our townhouse was the very same way. They've moved like to those boxes where you use a key and you get your stuff out, which is kind of a pain. But there are a lot of people still in our area with mailboxes right in front of their house, but nobody ever plants them up. It's kind of weird. Like, I know in the Midwest that's a big deal. Like, people just do that. And it's like a really fun thing to do. I don't know. Hopefully one of these days we'll get around to doing that. Thanks for this one. Love the pink blooms. Don't know what made me think of this, but does Erin ever bring you flowers for Mother's Day, birthdays, etc. as a surprise for a vase or to plant outside? Erin has learned a lot throughout the years. You brought me flowers a few times. If I get flowers, I prefer to get flowers that I arrange myself. My mom was the same way. Like, if he goes to the grocery store and just picks me out a bunch of pretty things and then puts them in one of those plastic sleeves and brings them home for me to arrange myself, I like to do that the very best. He buys me live plants, like the pear espalier that I just planted behind the greenhouse. I had a birthday last month, and that was his birthday gift to me, along with a couple of topiaries. So living plants for me is like a much safer gift, and that's usually what he does, and I love it. Crystal said, you mentioned your sweet woodruff. Will you let it spread and fill around your other plants or keep it maintained and compact? Mine is spreading like crazy. So that sweet woodruff has been in our garden up there for a long time, but it's in the shade, like pretty good shade, so that the shade keeps that growth in check. I had sweet woodruff in our last garden, and it was in a sunny spot. And it got sun in the morning until like mid to late afternoon, and it spread like crazy because I think it had enough light to do that. I think the more shade you throw at it, the slower it is to spread, and I wouldn't mind it spreading around in that area so long as it doesn't spread like wildfire. I would probably be careful with it out in a sunnier location. And last question, Kimberly said, have you ever planted a stilby? It's another plant that likes moist shade, but I don't think I've seen you plant them. They have the vertical spikes that you love. I haven't planted a stilby, and I think the reason why is that they're a little hard in our area because it's so dry here, and I know I can control the water in terms of drip and all of that. So it's something I really should try again. It's just one that I have shied away from because it was one at the garden center when I was down there working and having to water them every day. It's the first one that would crisp up and dry up and like kind of give us fits about water, and so I just kind of like naturally stay away from them, but they are beautiful and I should try them. And that's it for today's recap video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope it was helpful to hear some answers, and I'm excited to get going on projects. We're gonna do one right now. Right after this video is done, I'm gonna plant up a window box. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video. Bye.